Welcome in everybody to another edition of Rivals Runback. This week we're going to be tackling last week's performances in week 4 of Rivals League. Of course, my name is Righteous, and as always, joining with me is CB the Barbarian. CB, how you doing tonight?
Doing all right. The final run back, I guess, of the regular season, kind of, as we go
Kind
into
of.
games tonight, at least. Yeah, no, excited we made it here. No FF so far. Hopefully, I don't jinx that. Starting a little bit late today. Apologies. You can blame EV and Patriots for that. But no, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, as always, we're going to take a look at the standings because this week, more so than probably the few weeks in the past, there's a lot to talk about in regards to that. As you all know, the top 2 spots have been secured. Number 1's going to go to Dig, 2 is going to go to Roar, and then after that, it's kind of an all-out brawl for the last 2 spots of playoffs. Um, so do you want to jump into the standings here, CB?
Yep.
All right. So as it stands currently, the Patriots, after last week's performance, have come up to the 3rd position in the poll. GCC Shinobi in 4th, and Eclipse Valkyries at 5th, and GCL Team 8 holding down the bottom spot, as they will remain regardless of tonight's decisions. But the 3, 4, and 5 are all alive in the playoff race. CB, you want to talk a little bit about what we got going on there?
Oh yeah, I mean, you already mentioned Dig Rar. They're stuck there no matter what. The Digna washed SEAL Team 8. Unfortunately, we were hoping we would, once we got to the last week, we would have all matches mean something as far as standings go. SEAL Team 8 is going to be in 6th no matter what. Digna washed in 1st no matter what. But for the other people, Patriots win 2-1 or 2-0, and they are in the playoffs. EV, if they win 2-0, they are in the playoffs. Shinobi, if they take at least one game off of RAR, I think they're in playoffs. And then there's going through all the different scenarios will take forever. Probably seen it in the chats if you've been in there, but it's going to be interesting to watch. We have EV and Patriots being streamed tonight, so a lot of eyes will be on that one. Shinobi, RAR. I'm sure RAR will get a little spicy. They are already have the 2nd seed locked in, but who they play, somewhat a little bit in their hands, a little bit in the Patriots EV game. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so the easiest scenario to track and follow is if the Patriots win, they will claim the 3rd seed, and Shinobi will claim the 4th due to their head-to-head and better record over EV. Anything outside of that gets a little complicated. So if you're a Shinobi or Patriots fan, you want the Patriots to win. If you're Eclipse Valkyries, their only option to get into the playoffs at this point is to pick up a victory over the Patriots. So this will be a play-in game for both of those teams, which will be very exciting, but that's going to come a little bit later in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes time.
Yeah.
So we got a lot to talk about between now and then, starting with the power rankings, which you all know and love so much. Into the top lane we go. Holding on that 6th spot, going to be Andreas 417. It's kind of a curse being, in the last place team. Typically, when that happens, even if you're doing okay individually, it really affects your standings here in the power rankings. I think Andreas in lane is actually decent, pretty solid, maybe a little bit over aggressive, but holds well into most matchups that we've seen so far. And then outside of that, it kind of falls apart for this player and for this team. So Andreas at 6.
Yeah, had some decent showings. Obviously, only played half the season with the team. So, but this week I think was it Andrews that played the Wukong top. Maybe I'm tripping.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Wukong I think early looked pretty decent, but yeah, the team overall losing most every game, which is kind of tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I got the better of BKs in game 1, and then game 2 kind of all fell apart for them. Actually, last week, just kind of interesting to note, is the first week that every single match was a 2-0 victory.
Yeah, yeah, the quickest week.
Um, quickest week. At 5, gonna be Diet Coke. Eclipse Valkyries have been struggling. Diet Coke, no exception to that. Part of the issue this player faces, in my opinion, is the lack of champ pool. Anytime you have to R1 Malphite in game 2 because your pool got pinched after one game, it's a pretty tough position to be in. And I think that's where the majority of this player's struggles lie. CB, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think both games were like terrible games. I mean, obviously, you look at there's only 6 people in your fifth. Oh, that means they played absolutely terrible. I think it was maybe the Mundo game played decent. But yeah, there's only 4 people ahead of you. That's how you should look at it. Not that there's only one person behind you. But Diet Coke usually put on tank duty. For the most part, does well. Like he's not going 0-10 by any means, but just not. He's not required to be the flashy point of the EV roster. So we'll see if they can
Yeah,
bounce back later today.
yeah, we will have to see indeed. Big match for him. So if EV takes a victory, Diet Coke gonna have to step up. Alcoholic at 4. Alcoholic kind of in the same lane as Andreas, in which this player does fine in lane, and then kind of gets lost in the mid to late game. So the map movements don't make too much sense, in my opinion. And then the team fights could use a little bit of work. Any other thoughts here, CB?
Alcoholic and Diet Coke, at least this week, and I think a lot of weeks, are similar boats. Play a decent amount of the tank role. And a lot of our games, at least in Rivals League, have been kind of win game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're pretty close to each other. Alcoholic has had some more maybe pop-off performances, so that's why he's at 4th.
Yeah, game 2 specifically against Dig, he actually went 6-3-3 against Storm and that roster on the Dr. Mundo. However, like I was saying, the mid to late game, Dr. Mundo at that position, probably your only win con is that split push. Instead, a lot of overgrouping, a lot of trying to force fights when it wasn't going to get you the win. So, unfortunately, Alcoholic at 4, which, right in the middle of the pack, not a bad place to be, but we're moving into the top 3.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a separation when you get into the top half.
Mm-hmm.
They feels like a decent split between the top 3 and the bottom 3. Keys had some interesting champs pulled out and some flex pixes that could have maybe gone mid. Was it Key that pulled out the Pantheon maybe?
Yep. Key.
Akali, yeah.
Yeah, that Pantheon was crazy. I said it on cast, but in a game that had a Syndra and a Mel that went 45 minutes, somehow Key on the Pantheon did the most damage in the game. So really impressive stuff in that first game. And then game 2, that Akali, he's brought it out a couple of times. Looked really good on that as well.
Yeah. Top 2.
Storm at number 2. Storm, it's interesting. I think Storm has the freedom to play very fast and loose, which is what we saw in that game 2 against GCC Shinobi, where he's just overextending on sides on repeat and dying to 2 or 3 man ganks. The benefit for him being on the Dignawash team is it really doesn't matter. Getting put in that position in the 1v1 on the top lane, quote unquote island, so to speak, on side lanes. Yes, he does a lot of damage. I just think he's not playing clean, and that's what's hurting him. That's why he's not number 1.
Yeah, I think from a team perspective, like he can afford that, especially this last week, right? Dig all around is a very strong team, so you can afford sometimes to not have the best stat line or get picked off sometimes because your team, somebody else can pick up that slack. So only dropping to 2. I don't even know what Storm won last week, but
I think he was number 1, maybe potentially. I'd have to look, but
being 2 after 2 not the best performances this week.
Yeah, I mean, it was back to back, kind of shaky performances. He got solo killed in the Silas versus Malphite matchup early. Granted, he turned it on and was able to put a lot of pressure there and, zone alcoholic out, but it wasn't the best showing. So Storm, despite not having the best showing, being at number 2, I think um, makes sense because he is doing a lot in team fights. He is contributing damage and the like. Which means in number 1, BKs of the Patriots. I think for you, CB, and a little bit for me, but for you, you've been talking a lot about how it seems like every series when the Patriots are taking victories, there's like one game where BKs is kind of 1v9ing and his team's actively trying to lose the game, but somehow they come out on top.
Yeah, it's almost like it's either the top or the 80 carry. A lot of the games for Patriots, for some reason, only one of them can do well at a time, maybe. But no, BK's he has had some champion picks that have been suspicious. I think it was what this week was the Vayne
Yep.
top. Not a bad showing, just not a great showing. And then the other game just hard 1v9 carried the team. So maybe not the best recipe for your team to have a player that's kind of win lane win game, lose lane maybe lose game. But
Hmm.
when you're hard carrying your team, it seems one game every single match. You're gonna be in the top 3, and this week it's gonna be number 1.
Yeah. That second game, York ending up 6,000 gold over Andreas. 10-1, just being a split post menace. There's a very real possibility where BKs doesn't pop off. That series goes 3 games. So, um, there you have it for the top laners. Any final thoughts before we move on to jungle?
No, I think top. There maybe the bottom half was a little tricky, but top top feels good. I think jungle as we move into that one feels pretty good. I think that might have been the one role that we agreed on, so we'll just go into it.
Yeah, across the board, we were on the same page. Starting with Pandorm at the bottom. I said it in last week's Rivals run back. Kind of the same thing. When you're on a struggling team, a lot of players feel like they'll have to overforce or overextend their resources to kind of make up for the lack of success. Pandorum spending a lot of time in lanes, trying to get lanes ahead. As a result, kind of falls behind in their jungle tempo, jungle clear, and the like. Had a really weird build on the Mordekaiser jungle as well. Wasn't a huge fan for what they were playing into. So Pandorum at 6.
Yeah, I mean it was a good flex by their team, and maybe
Yeah.
not might have been not what Pandorum wanted initially, but they flexed it to him. So good on Pandorum for having that flexibility. But yeah, just kind of another rough showing. Obviously swapped roles after the first or
Partway
second
through.
game. So
Yeah.
someone's got to be 6. Unfortunately, it lands a lot of the times on the team that is at the bottom of the standing. So
In Pandorum's defense, he did pop off on the Hecarim.
which we don't see
Um,
very often. We don't see the Hecarim. We don't get to see Hecarim
we
too
don't see the
much.
Hecarim very often. It was just the rest of the map was kind of on fire, and despite Pandorum's best carry performance from the jungle, it wasn't enough in that game 2 against the Patriots. So there's been some bright spots for him, but still ends up at 6. Ribeye at 5. I had a chance to actually got on a voice. Well, he joined a voice call I was in. He was explaining, some of his thoughts and things, and he's a very confident player, which I'll give him props for. But kind of like Pandorum, playing so heavily for his lanes is good. Eclipse Valkyries, does get some solid early game advantages. I just think that in the long run, as they get to the mid to late, have a jungle that is underfarmed, underleveled, and not able to contribute maybe as more to the team success as the jungle across from him. And so Ribeye, in my eyes, probably needs to play a little bit more greedy, especially on the picks like the fiddle and whatnot, to really make them work.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Ribeye played 2 tanks this week, right? So um,
Yeah.
not to say it can't work. Obviously, they have a good team despite their overall match record, which is kind of crazy. Been high on EV all split. But yeah, you go from a week of playing 1 or 2 carry junglers to 2 tanks this last week. So just unfortunately not the best showing against RAR.
Yeah, and I mean he looked decent enough in game 1. EV actually had a pretty sizable lead until it all kind of fell apart, and then game 2 it was a little bit worse for wear. But um, I think Ribye's early games are good. I think he just needs to kind of path it a little bit better, in my opinion. I'm stealthy at 4. I'm stealthy has been as high as number 1. Um, the last couple of weeks for GCC have been very rough. Um, this week, this time around, he actually had um, his starting lineup once again. Um, Dante's Inferno, formerly just Inferno, back in the lineup. Looked a little bit better. Kind of a player too, where he's excelled on some picks like the Udyr and such. Got placed on 2 tank duty games, and it didn't look like he was super comfortable.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4 and 5, almost interchangeable. And coincidentally enough, I believe they played the same 2 champions as one another on the
Uh-huh.
Maokai and Sejuani. So uh, really similar weeks. Kind of the tank duty that didn't really pan out. Um, I'm stealthy had a little bit better of a maybe an impact and stat line than Ribeye, but there I'd say 4 or 5 is pretty close.
At 3,
Number three, my lord.
Cry making an appearance on this list once again. She got subbed out because of graduation and whatnot. Doki subbed in. Looked pretty bad. So Cry right back into the lineup. Made a tough game 1 work on the Evelyn. She talked about it in her post game interview. It was kind of a tough game to play it into, but it's her comfortable champ. Did enough to get that win, and then game 2 really popped off on that Lilia. Ended up 3 levels above Ribeye, and was doing a lot of work there. Honestly, super solid player. Really cerebral about the game, and she talked a lot about if one side's winning, I gotta change my pathing and start pathing towards that side, and stuff like that. So number 3, just because 2 and 1, I feel like are a little bit more impactful for their team. Not to say Cry is not making a positive impact. I just feel like 2 and 1, if they don't play in the games with their respective teams, maybe the outcomes might be a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean I think there's a so I say that I think there's a decent gap between the top 3 and the top 3 and bottom 3.
Hmm.
Cry, you could maybe make the argument is good enough to be 1 or 2.
Yeah.
The top 2 maybe more consistent or have had really good weeks back to back, or back to back for whenever they played the actual role because one of them took a week off. But yeah, the top 3 really close to each other. Cry popping off the Lilia game was nice. Just the other 2, just a little bit more to keep those top 2 spots.
I said something. I immediately regret it. I said if the top 2 weren't playing for their respective teams, they might not walk away with a win. We saw what happened with Doki and Rar when Cry wasn't playing, which was exactly that. They got O2'd. So I'm not saying Cry isn't valuable to her team. I'm just saying the impact from the top 2 spots a little bit more. I said it too. Um, the Skarner game from my site got a little bit silly goofy. Um, you know, there was a misplay in the bottom lane in that game too, which got outrage ahead on the Jinx. But in game 1, the Amumu 4-0 and 12, anytime you're the main engage and go deathless, you're doing something right. Just found a lot of picks, had really good clear, pathing around the objectives, and it was a really easy game for them despite BK's going down early.
Yeah, solid performance back to back weeks. Moving back to that jungle spot, um, taking a bunch of kills, maybe I don't know on purpose. Who knows? But no solid performances. Yeah, the bot. I mean, the bot lane play might be one of the reasons why Eyesight didn't jump to the first spot. Who knows? Because that was like the only way you lose a game is if you feed the Jinx, and that's what they attempted to do for a second. But other than that play, looked really solid. Um, I'm curious. Eyesight's been on a lot of tank duties, kind of how we mentioned on some of the top laners. Eyesight's been playing a lot of tanks, so we'll see if he spices it up a little bit tonight or not. But solid showing. He's going to keep that number 2 spot, which means number 1 is going to go. Is it back to Iblock, or has he been back 2 weeks now? I forget when he left, but
Last week was Eyesight. Iblock was 2. This time they flip flopped. Iblock at 1. Had a couple of clutch steals, including that Baron in game
hmm.
1, which in my eyes, it's kind of a skill, to be able to steal objectives away as the enemy jungler. Um, the volley bear looked really good. And then game two, that Nefiri, 11, 4, and 10, absolutely popping off.
Yeah.
One of the better carry performances we've seen from Iblock. So, taking that top spot.
Yeah, a fed Nefiri, especially in the jungle role, is something you don't want to see on the other side, on the other team. So, what was it, like 11 bomb in the kills? So,
Yeah.
popped off enough to take back the number one spot.
Yeah, just a different play style from my site. I cite, the tank team fight presence, but Iblock willing to get their hands dirty a little bit in the early game, play those carries, and then those clutch steals as well went a lot for their team. All right, mid lane we go. Someone you don't know making an appearance once again was gone last week. Frost was playing in their place, came back. I think the theme for NG, it's kind of a season to forget for them. And someone you don't know, that first game on the Galio was a bit rough. You saw what they're trying to accomplish with their comp, right? The Wukong gets a flank angle, goes in, gets the knock up. The Galio should come over the top. It just didn't happen. And because of that, the Galio felt a little bit out of place. On the Ziggs, Ziggs was whatever. Farmed well, did some poke, but unfortunately couldn't pick up that win.
Yeah, the Ziggs in lane felt fine. Played it safe. Kind
Yep.
of just what you expect on why you picked Ziggs to begin with. So nothing crazy that game, but just the other four or other five people this week played a little bit better. But yeah, can take the sixth spot. Unfortunately, that's all right though. Number 5 is gonna be, we're saying Ray. It's Ray, right?
Yeah,
Definitely
to my knowledge. Yeah, I think Ray is a player that has had, very high highs, very low lows. It's kind of demonstrated in this game. The first game against EV was kind of a slog for RAR in general. Went 2 2 and 8 on that patented Cassante mid. Looked fine on it. Was struggling early, came on late as they got tanky, kind of how the pick goes. And then in game two goes 5-0 and 11 on the rise. Looked really good. Um, I think for Ray, at least for me, a little bit more consistency, a little bit more carry potential. Um, I would also like them to play a 2 game series and win without, uh, you know, going back to the Cassante. I get it. If the Cassante is list up, it's your comfort pick. Take it because you look good on it. I'm just a little bit worried outside of that pick, like a full 3 game, 4 game, 5 game series, what this player looks like as they have to dig deeper into their pool.
Yeah, I mean Ray's not, in my opinion, not really expected to be the like solo carry of the team of how Roar is constructed. So I mean, didn't have a like terrible week by any means. Someone's got to get fifth. I mean, I could see Roar could win it all, and Ray could still stay maybe in the bottom half. That's just kind of is what it is. If you're not going to be the biggest flashiest player to hard carry, then it's kind of the nature of solo rankings. But as long as you're okay with that, the most important thing is that your team wins, right? So,
Yeah, I do have to
decent.
say, mid lane was probably the hardest, one of the harder ones to rank for me. Probably CB as
I think
well.
mid and 80 carry this
Uh,
week. Yeah.
yeah, I think as we can move on to number 4. The reason I'm bringing this up is both of these players went head to head to each other. As I have the wrong logo, my apologies, EV. Um, Soren probably got the better of Ray in game 1, and then it just kind of fell off for EV. Game 2, it was all Ray. I don't know how close you think these 2 players are. I think it's extremely close. I think Ray in team fights is extremely impactful. I think Solaram's laning is probably just a little bit better. Um, Once Solaram gets out of lane, I get really worried for her, just because it's been a couple weeks, pretty much since EV's last win, where EV, once they hit that mid game mark, it's like they just have forgotten how to close out a game. And so for Solaram specifically, I like to see her step up a little bit more, as there is so much emphasis put on the mid lane and the AD carry for EV.
Yeah, I mean, I think the teams overall are constructed a little bit differently, where EV almost needs Solram to pop off. and RAR
Hmm.
doesn't really need Ray to. So maybe a little bit different roles. I like Solram ahead of Ray just because I feel like Solram's ceiling, at least in lane, is maybe a little higher. Um, but I mean, fourth, fifth, flop him either way. Kind of had some not the best and consistent showings. Usually doing one game pretty well and then one game just kind of existing. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly, 3 through 5 were very very close for me. You could probably argue a case for any order. Millie Bobby Brown, in my opinion, probably the best mechanical mid of the three between MBB, Solram, and Ray, respectively. Um, Similarly to Solram, the MBB can get these huge leads, and it seems like the impact just isn't quite hitting as much as Shinobi has needed it to. Um, and then I also think MBB more prone to being a coin flip within lane. So I think the highs are a lot higher than what Solram has presented over the course of the season, but the lows are also have been extremely low. Um, so third, I think makes sense in terms of potential and the ability to carry a game. But when it's rough, it's really rough for this player.
it's tough because they have you know, different play styles, kind of all three of these a little bit. But Millie Bobby Brown, of course, playing usually the melee and or assassin champs in the mid lane. I think it was it this week they popped off on the Ambessa?
Mbessa.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, a pop off game. I think that game is why they're third over the other two this week.
Hmm.
Kiana game didn't look the best, but
Nope.
um, as with a lot of the mid laners this week, one good game, one game we'll forget about.
Hmm. Into the top two, and I think, at least in my opinion, the reason these two players are in the top two are the sake of consistency. Terran, of course, a sub for Dig. Who knows when we'll see them again? But looked really good in their one showing. The Ari game, you know, going against MBB wasn't the reason why the Abesso was popping off. It was really just Millie Bobby Brown's ability to team fight later in that game where they, started to get ahead and skirmish. But then game two, the Swain, really good pick into what Shinobi presented, and it really had an impact. So tearing it too.
Yeah, two games, both consistently did well. Um, didn't have to hard solo carry, but no, did well. I think dropped 7 kills both games, so good laning phase and looked solid out of lane as well. I assume they go back to sub. Who knows what Dig pulls out this week, as it's kind of a practice for fun week. But stepping in for a week and being ranked number 2, it's nothing to be upset about.
Yeah. That means at number one, the lone remaining player to have played last week is the Lord JK. Ever since joining the Patriots roster, a big part of the reason, in my opinion, why they're doing so well is the synergy between Sight and JK. Very high KP, pretty much if there's action on the map. It's happening around this player. Game two, I think for Patriots, outside of BK's performance, probably one they could forget. It was a little sloppy at times, but in that game one, the Swain doing a lot of good things. BK's was kind of struggling early. Intelligence on the Senna got ahead very early, but still needed that protection from the Swain, and the Swain provided. So Lord JK won.
Yeah, for me, I think 1 and 2 this week were very close. Because Lord JK, at least the second game, I mean, played well. Just didn't have didn't do anything too crazy. Didn't hard carry or anything like that, but played really well. And then of course, number 1 and number 2 here on the list both had a Swain game, in which they looked very good. So pretty
It's
close for me.
champ,
But
champ diff.
yeah, champ Swain mid diff. Mm. But there you have mid. We got time.
Yeah, we got
Now,
time to keep going.
80 carry was the tough one for me, at least the top 4. Maybe 5, 6, the order of 5, 6 could go either way, and the top 4 were tough for me.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll kick it off at 6 with Outrage, which feels bad. Doesn't just taking a step back. Outrage at 6. It's like, how do you rank them as the worst one? I don't think that's necessarily accurate, but we're going off of this last week, more weighted heavily than the other weeks. Of course, he's only played half the season. Um, don't know if he's playing tonight. Don't think he is, but either way, looked good on the Tristana. Um, but outside
I
of
don't think
that,
he got
maybe in lane.
Tristana,
No,
did he?
am I
Let
tripping?
me look. You might be tripping. I
Oh,
might be
that was
tripping.
last week. That was last week. That was
That was
last week. I was
last
tripping.
week.
That's Jinx.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
Jinx looked good.
Jinx looked good. Tristana the week before, so had back-to-back
Yeah.
decent showings on one champ in one game. So naturally going to be at sixth.
So push comes to shove. I feel like AD carry, you have to perform in team fights, and then you also have to be a reason why your team doesn't lose. Outrage, unfortunately, in both of the games, even the Jinx game, was getting caught out on mid lane a lot. There's
Mm.
times where he's getting caught out on mid, where he's trying to rotate to the team fight, doesn't have the help to get there, gets caught out again. Um, Part of that could be a communication issue. Part of it might just be his team not helping him out. But also at the same time, you got to realize, I remember specifically in that Jinx game, support goes mid to try to make a play. Immediately, Outrage gets killed, which, when you're in that position, you got to respect it. You're in the 2v1. So for me, the reason I ranked him at 6, because I think you had him at 5th, was just that decision making, being at the wrong place at the wrong time a couple times. Too many times, in my opinion. I think mechanically he's just as good as any AD carry on the list, but that decision making really hurt him.
Concur. Fifth. Sorry, had to answer something.
Oh, you're good.
Go ahead.
5th, Birdie. So this is a different kind of decision making, but similar in the same vein to Outrage. I think Ferdy just doesn't get the opportunity to have enough time in team fights or actually be at team fights to be any higher on this list. I think when Ferdy and EV do well, they win. When Ferdy isn't present in team fights or not doing well, they lose. Part of it could be that Ferdy just thinks it's a bad fight, is not willing to show up. Part of it could be EV's just pulling the trigger too soon. This last week was weird. Game one, they had that lead, and then once it hit like 30 minutes, it was just like EV was like, okay, we're just gonna contest everything. You can't do that, especially if you have an AD carry that is ahead, a mid lane that is ahead. So I just like to see more confidence from this player, especially Ferdy and SolRam. They do get early game leads. They should be able to convert it into some victories. It just hasn't happened for the last couple weeks.
Oh, thought I muted myself. Yeah. Fifth and sixth was tough for me back and forth. And I kind of blanked out on what you said, so apologies if I repeat something. But yeah, Ferdy has the hard carry potential. I put him in the top 5 people of the whole league that could potentially carry your team if put in the right position. Just hasn't really happened over the last few weeks, so we'll see if they pull out a protect Ferdy comp tonight or not.
Yeah, I mean, last time it was really good on that vein a couple weeks ago. At 4, it's
That's where
gonna be
it got really tough for me.
okay. I believe it's Macho 0001 making their first appearance on any of these lists. Macho, for those of you that were on an LXC Sentinel, a player that could play both, mages and AD carries, which is exactly what he did, or they did in this first series that they were in. Played Mel game 1, looked really really good. 11-3-5. Played Silver game 2, looked really really good. 4-1-16. A lot of these, scaling. We're just biding time. We're gonna play around top side. Let me get a couple items, then I'll show up and carry. And they did that two games in a row. Looked really solid.
Yeah, that's why it's tough. The gap between 1 and 4 this week for me was very very close. Macho popped off. I mean, did well both games.
Mhm.
Coming in as a sub, maybe there's a skew or a lean towards the players that have been there, have been on this list type thing. Because sometimes it's a little scuffed when somebody only plays 1 or 2 games. Just putting all those players at number 1, but Macho played really well. I'm surprised. I'll be surprised if they don't make maybe a sneaky appearance in playoffs, but we'll have to see.
So 3 and 4, there might be some contention as to why this player is ranked ahead of Macho. It is going to be Dante's Inferno of GCC. I am not envious of the position Inferno has been in, the series that he does play, just because the comps that Shinobi are kind of forced into drafting, the 80 carry is kind of left out to dry, right? Limited appeal, limited CC to keep you alive. At the same time, the mid laner playing, those melee picks. It means that there's a lot of pressure for Inferno to follow up and lay down damage. And I think mechanically, Inferno is just trying his best. I just think it's a little bit of comp gap when it comes to GCC the past couple weeks. Just there's not a lot of resources thrown at this player. Kind of ever since we seen him pop off on that Jinx, several weeks ago, and it hasn't been um, successful for Shinobi because of that. However, I do think Inferno's a really really good 80 carry, which is why he ends up at 3.
There was a moment when I was ranking players that I had Inferno at 1. Um, I think if you swap, I think Inferno might be one of the most mechanically gifted 80 carries in the league right now. Watching
Mm-hmm.
Inferno play, so losing the games maybe dings you a little bit. Getting caught once or twice. Granted, part of that is your team and the peel and whatnot. Kind of Inferno and Ferdy sometimes in similar boats of they could pop off and carry harder if they had maybe better situation in certain games. But three feels fine. I just there's the argument for to be higher if you're just looking at carry, but obviously that support and team overall success creeps in a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, kind of like something that I kind of like to do when doing these power rankings too is like if you took this player and put him in a position for any of these other teams, how would they be looking? I think Inferno probably looks a lot better for most of the other teams, but that's neither here nor there. For Shinobi, hopefully they figure it out. There's a chance they miss playoffs and it's out of their hands, but um, if they do, Inferno and the rest of the squad are gonna have to step up. Intelligence at 2. I think Intelligence had a very, very good showing. I think there's a sneaky amount of pressure on this player after a week away, where Nike Dragon comes in, pops off. It would be kind of a little bit nerve wracking to come in and then immediately your team starts to perform a little bit worse. With you at carry, that was not the case. Intelligence looked really good. I don't know what him and Death Knight did, but they looked like to be more on the same page more than they have been in weeks past. And because of that, he was able to pop off, do really well. 12-0 and 11 on that Senna, got fed early and just kept the pedal to the metal. Game 2 was a little silly goofy from the Patriots, but still had a very nice performance on that MF. Landed a couple of nice ultimates as well.
Yeah, like I said, top four all really close. I think the only reason I feel fine with Eli not being at number 1 is there are some team fights where you look around and you're like, where's the 80 carry? And he's full
Mm-hmm.
health in Narnia across the map. So other than some of those, maybe lack of aggression plays, Eli looks really good in lane. Most team fights looks really good. Spaces really well, just sometimes maybe a little bit too much. But um, no, I mean, coming in, especially after missing a week um, at 2 feels good.
That means number 1, the player with 4 points and not a lot of expectations, Riley Sauce 21, making their first number 1 appearance for Dignawash. Riley, we're talking a lot about mechanics and how these AD carries look. I don't think Riley has the best mechanics as an ADC. I don't think, if they have to be put in a position to 1v9. I'm not sure they're a player that can do that. However, they fulfill their role for Dignawash extremely well. They don't die. They do solid in land. They show up in team fights and do damage. And I mean, Dignawash is benefiting because of that.
Yeah. The good part about I don't want to say they know they're not the most mechanically best AD carry, but you know people are overlooking maybe Riley. Obviously only 4 points, right? So
Hmm.
one of probably or I guess the lowest AD carry. You're on a good team, good supporting cast around you, and that allows you just to play the role of just carry and do damage. And Riley has made it up to the number one spot. Um, Maybe catching some flack on the way up just because Riley does have a good support and a good team around them. So a little bit of an uphill battle to prove that you are actually one of, if not the best AD carries. And this week looks like you proved it.
Yeah, for sure.
Most,
Okay,
most important role.
one last roll, and then the team rankings. Blackout, coming after a week of absence. You can say picking up where they left off. At number 6 again. I mean, it's tough. It's tough if you're a Nefarious Gaming fan, for this split of rival league.
Yeah, just some tough showings. Back-to-back tank duty games. Didn't like hard feed 020 or anything crazy like that. Just kind of got put on the protect who you can type situation. I think Blackout being one of, if not the lowest players, at least starters, for any of the
Hmm.
teams. So yeah, rough split overall for the team. Gonna end up at 6th again.
Hopefully, this last week they can come out, have some fun, come out swinging against the number 1 seed. Kind of tough. Sapphire Gem at 5. So kind of in the realm where we're talking about Inferno. I think there's a time and a place for the Enchanter picks. I'm not an Enchanter hater, Sapphire. Don't come at me. I just think that the team comps, top to bottom, the play styles for each player in a vacuum are fine. Put together makes it really hard to win comp games. That's all I'm saying. I think when you have a player that can only play melee mids, having an enchanter, and then having limited forms of engage and CC, which is why Stealthy was probably playing those tanks and not looking so comfortable. It's tough. It is what it is. I think Sapphire Gem doesn't get a lot of help, to her credit, in the Vision game. She's trying her best. She puts out a lot of wars. She's up there for Vision score for her respective position. But then you look, and GCC's the lowest in terms of average Vision across the team. So there's fragmentation happening there somewhere along the lines. It's not clicking for them right now, and they kind of just have a weak tune-up to hopefully get it together before playoffs. We'll have to see what happens with Shinobi.
Yeah, I think a little bit like you said. Yeah, getting pinged just because the overall team success and whatnot. Argument for Sapphire to maybe be one or two spots higher, at least in the same kind of realm or tier conversation. I mean, had a good Janna game. I think game 1 maybe.
Hmm.
So by no means is it you're just playing poorly every game. It's just a mix of a bunch of things, and I also think the other supports have had more consistency these last week or two.
Yeah, I mean, like the Janna game, like you said, looked fine. That game, Shinobi was probably in a position to win. Ended up losing. Yeah, it's not clicking for them right now. Something's got to happen. I don't know if it's communication or what, but definitely, there's definitely still time for this player to move up the list to triumphant, making a return to the list. He hasn't gone as just the player formerly known as Pillar, name changing back to his roots from what we know him from LXC Sentinel. Um, a player that makes a lot of plays, and like I said, when Ferdy is present in team fights, they win. A lot of that being is like triumphant, having the follow up from some really nice engages. How and this isn't just a triumphant issue, but how many times have we seen in Rivals League where the support gets like a 3 or 4 man engage, or they find a pick, and there's just no help, right? That kind of happens to triumphant a lot, where if Ferdy's not there or if Solram's not there, he makes this pick. It looks good, but either people aren't ready for it or they're not willing to go in with them. And so he's kind of suffering because of that.
Yeah, it's kind of a rough week overall for EV, I guess. So Triumphant just kind of had not the best stats. It's weird seeing Triumphant. I think he's one of the best supports in the league, but have to go off what actually happens in games and the performance. And the week against RAR was not the best.
At 3, Jonikis, like Triumphant, makes a lot of plays for his team. The difference being is when RAR is online and when they're, in the game, tuned in, RAR's team fights and ability to move around the map is very, very clean. Jonikis getting the help that he needs when making those engages. Uh, the reason he might not be higher is um, this last week, probably the week where he was asked to do the least in lane, which it's not his fault. He was playing with a Mel and a Sivir, right? So he's just kind of sitting there and scaling. Like I said, I feel like he plays the team fights very well. He's a big part of their vision game. So Jonikis in the top 3 makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 and 3 for me this week was really close. Could make the argument either way, kind of a tie situation, but I mean, Jonikis popped off. Had a sub come in, kind of a weird game, and I'd say the games weren't the closest series we've ever seen. But no, Jonikis looked good. Has looked good for a few weeks in a row, so I expect them to stay in the top 3 next week. I guess I don't know if we're doing playoffs, but no, Jonikis, a reason that whoever you put at 80 carry, they're probably going to do well.
Number 2, as CB might have to do some admin duties, so I'm willing to talk your ear off here. Number 2 going to be Death Knight. Death Knight actually, let me fact check myself. I believe leading the way in vision per game or vision per minute for the entirety of Rivals League right now. He was when he last checked. Okay, he's close. He's second. Rogue Gorilla slightly ahead of him by like 0.1% or something, or 0.1 percentage, 0.1 point. Death Knight, ever since last week, has kind of taken it to another level. Has looked in the realm of the Jonikisses and the number 1 support we have yet to mention, where he's a big part of their team fights, their skirmishes, their engages. Big part of the vision game, looking for picks. If he can keep it up, definitely deserves to be here. It's a player that kind of had to slowly ramp up as the split went on, but the last couple of weeks has been knocking it out of the park.
What I miss?
Nothing. We just talked about Death Knight. We can move on to number 1, or you can give your 2 cents.
I've heard of him. No, he's been playing better these last 2 to 3 weeks. Started the split off a little rocky, but seems like they're getting some more chemistry down the bot lane. Like I said, 2 and 3 could kind of be flipped around either way, but still top 3 regardless. Second this week. We'll see if he can take number 1 spot from Rogue Gorilla, from Dignawash, who looks good pretty much every week. Maybe bumps up Riley if you want to go that direction, because we all know supports do more than their 80 carries. But no, looked good on both tanks. So we'll see if they spice it up this week. Obviously, they're playing against NGT8 in a game that's more so just for fun, maybe for stat padding or trying different things. So we'll see if they pull out something that's not tank duty. But yeah, top of the list again. If I think they've been maybe top 3 all split, wouldn't be surprised. So number 1.
Rogue Gorilla for me probably the most polished in terms of a laning support, willing to put out pressure, get their 80 carries ahead, as well as making plays around the map, being where he needs to be, and setting up the vision and the playmaking potential. So definitely deserved at number 1. Last but not least, we have the team rankings, which we'll
speed run it.
Attempt to fly through those as
I'm gonna let it go.
EV and Patriots are willing to go, are ready to go. NGC teammate, no surprise at 6. They remain winless. Maybe they changed something this week. Probably not, but we'll see. Cubs Valkyries at 5. Has looked very, very shaky, a little bit lost. I mean, their playoff hopes are still within their own hands, but it has been rough. Got a rough couple of weeks for them. Shinobi at 4, have the head-to-head to Valkyries. I still believe that this team, if they can put it all together, iron out some of the kinks that have been affecting them, are a very, very good team. But Hasn't happened. Patriots, a team on the rise at 3, has looked really good. They have had kind of a 180 turnaround season ever since making those roster changes. Roar at 2. Um, the most put together team outside of Dignawash, who is at number 1. Now, Roar, you always have the chance that there's a new player, a new substitute that you're not expecting, could shake up that synergy. But if the same 5 players from last week compete here on out, could very well push Dignawash for the top team, potentially a finals matchup. That is your team rankings, DB. Want to throw anything in here before we throw it to a quick break?
I don't do. What do you want to speed run our predictions or no?
Oh, we got predictions too.
We can
Yeah,
speed run it though.
speed it. Let's
No,
speed
for
it.
this, most of this looks like the standings. Obviously, the third, fourth, and fifth spot. If you're a fan of one of those teams and you just move them to third, and it's probably still a valid list. Just kind of some head-to-head and whatnot. So, yeah, that's our list. We'll speed run our predictions so we can hop into the actual action. I'm sure you're tired of looking at us, so we'll do a quick because obviously they care about what we think.
Highly anticipated match, win, and they are in. I got Patriots 2-0. Evie has looked very, very shaky. I'm not confident in them in the slightest. You got Patriots 2-1, so you're expecting a 3-game banger.
Expecting, hoping for, however you want to word it. Yeah, I think it's going to come down to draft. So we'll see. I'm thinking 3 games, but we'll see.
We'll see. Next up, we got, I believe, Shinobi taking on Roar. Shinobi in the same vein as EV have struggled the past couple of weeks. You got Shinobi picking up a 2-1 victory. I got 2-0 Roar.
So it kind of depends on who plays, what happens, if there's e-subs, there's kind of stuff going on in the background. So we'll see if that has to happen. One of my main reasons was Shinobi kind of needs to win. And RAR could just sub in a bunch of different people and try something a little spicy. So that's the real reason. I think if it was a game that hard mattered for both teams, I'd probably pick RAR. But I figured RAR would maybe get a little spicy today.
A little silly goofy, try some stuff out. Makes sense. Maybe they're trying to shape who they face off in the playoffs. Last matchup of the week gonna be Dignawash taking on Nefarious Gaming. Even if it gets silly goofy, I think it's going to be 2-0 Dig.
Yeah, I think Dig, even if they want to get a little spicy, they might also still care about their stats and making the all-star team and all that fun stuff. So, and just having that flawless record. So I assume they're still try hard enough to win.
There you have it. Predictions, power rankings, and the like. I don't know if you'll call this the last Rivals recap. We'll probably do another one or 2 during playoffs. But there you have it. That's week 4 in a nutshell. We're going to throw it to a quick break. When we are back, it will be the 2v2 for Patriots EV, the must-win game. Stick around. It's going to be a banger. I'm excited. I hope you're as well. We'll be right back.